Hello, and welcome to Husky Talk. I am your host, the best podcast host in the universe, Steve Cully. I would like to thank our sponsors at Procyon Partners. Procyon Partners, they specialize in wealth management, employee benefits, and retirement planning. President Sean Rabinowitz is a proud supporter of Husky Talk. Uh, Currently, we need to be there for him and his wife. His son Ben has leukemia, needs a bone marrow transplant. They are doing a bone marrow drive at UCONN coming up. So we need people to show up. If you can't, we will put the website in the show notes. You can go to the website, have the testing kit sent to your house, and it's a quick cheek swab, mail it back. You could be the match that saves Ben's life. We also have to thank Pete Finch and the Finch Law Firm. If you have been arrested or feel your rights have been violated and you are in a pinch, call Finch. Pete Finch and the Finch Law Firm has fought battles all across the state of Connecticut and are based out of Bridgeport. They are based out of Bridgeport, Connecticut. And Bleeding Blue for Good. Bleeding Blue for Good, Mike Burton. He has done a phenomenal job raising NIL money for Bleeding Blue, our collective. We're 4 weeks away from the transfer portal, and now is the time. We need donations now more than ever to keep the players that we have and to bring in the players that we're going to need to have continued success. Go to www.bleedingblueforgood.org. And now I can finally introduce the guest of honor who I have known and very well and looked up to, Miss Keisha Cummings, a former UConn track star. And I just had Bethany Hart on earlier.
Hey, so Bethany.
She asked me to say hello, and I wanted to welcome you to Husky Talk.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. Oh, please tell Bethany I said hello.
I will. She was so excited that I was having you on because I try to get as many different athletes from different sports as I can. And it's always fun to have the track people on because I don't know the background. So it's such a learning experience for me. I enjoy it that much more because I get to know you. I get to learn your story. And to me, that's always the most interesting part. When you hear someone's story, you hear their background, where they came from, and what they're doing now. So that's why I am thrilled, and we're going to get right into it. So initially, I have no idea. Where are you from?
I am from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Steve, I love it. I love the authenticity.
It's a gimmick. Yeah.
It's a gimmick? Okay.
Yeah, it's just a gimmick. Yeah.
I'm from Philadelphia.
You're from PA? Okay.
Mm-hmm. I'm from Pennsylvania. Before we get started, I do want to send my prayers to Ben and his family.
Thank you so much.
Let them know that we have myself and some people here in Virginia. I'm going to go to church and put his name in our intercessory prayer with my spiritual father, Bishop Daniel Robinson in Mount Gilead. So
that's so sweet. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We believe in prayer. We believe in miracles from God. So I just want to send my prayers to Ben.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. We've been trying to do drives. They did a drive in Norwich, Connecticut a few weeks ago. They got UConn to do a drive. And then I reached out to a couple of former players that I know, principal in Florida, Jeff Larson, and Dave DeArmas, who's in Virginia, and asked them if they could help out and do drives at the high school. And they said, absolutely, whatever it takes. And I think that just shows that at UConn, we're a family. We stay together, and no matter what, we'll be there for each other. And I'm hopeful that we'll get a match. And Ben has already had leukemia, and he beat it once, and it just came back. And the kid is fearless, and I had a chance to meet him. I do a radio show for the Worcester Red Sox, covering the team, and I invited Sean and his wife out to a game. They came, and I got to sit next to Ben and get to know him, and it was just a great experience. Um, Ben knew that I wanted a cotton candy because I saw the cotton candy. I'm like, oh, that looks good. So for 3 innings straight, Ben hounded Sean, his father, for cotton candy. And of course, Sean gets his son the cotton candy. Ben immediately hands it over to me, and I'm eating the cotton candy. Sean just looks back, and he just starts shaking his head. I'm like,
Oh,
the
you got
kid,
them.
the kid's good.
Mm-hmm.
But he's
Well,
a happy kid. He loves sports, and we hope he's going to get through this. We're going to get a match. We're going to get the transplant, and God bless Sean and his wife because they are so positive. And I can't imagine what they're going through, but we are there for them. We are there
two
for them.
times the charm. He will get the match. We're going to come in agreement with that. And
So go ahead.
no, I really appreciate the fact that you have. I know you told me that you spoke to Bethany and Trisha. I appreciate the fact that you cover track. Um,
Yeah, I'm
because
trying to.
yeah, and
I'm trying to.
I can link you with some so many wonderful people from track. I don't know if you remember my roommate Lissa. Um,
Love her.
yeah.
She's refused to come on. But if
Oh
you
no.
can get her to come on, I would love to have her. I
Yeah.
love Lissa. I love Lissa.
Today is Matt's birthday, and so I saw that on Facebook earlier.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I had coffee on too. I
Okay.
remember I had her, and she's the first female firewoman in the state of Connecticut. She transitioned into being a firefighter, and she works in Norwich as well. So I thought that was cool, and I love the track people, the track athletes, and the stories, because track is so different because it's a team sport, but it's individualized.
Mm-hmm.
So it requires a huge commitment, and training on your own quite a bit, and a lot to be successful. So growing up in Philly, early on, were you an athlete? Did you play sports early on? 5, 6, 7, 8 in that age group?
I did. I have been running track since I was about 6 or 7 years old.
They had track
Yeah.
at 6 and 7 years old. Really?
Yeah. Philadelphia is like really big on track. And
I
so
had no
what happened
idea.
was my best friend and I, we used to be in the schoolyard and we used to always be all the boys. And it was a track coach, Mr. Munchkin. I never forget him. He said, I want to take you to the Philadelphia Flames. And that's how we got introduced to track, my best friend and I. So I've been running track, like I said, since I was like 6 or 7. And yes, it's really big in Philadelphia. You have
Wow.
you have track meets with hundreds, if not thousands, of people every week at Marcus Foster Track and Field, and so it is really big. It is definitely really big at a young age in Philadelphia.
Well,
Yes,
I always knew of the Penn relays. The Penn relays were the
exactly.
big ones, but yeah, I had no idea. When you're that young, are the events any different? I mean, do they still have you run like the 100 and all that, or no?
They
They
do.
do. Oh
They
my
do.
god.
So when you're young, you generally like most runners start off like the 100 and 200 because when you're like 6 and 7, you're not running 2 miles. So
Right.
like I started off as a sprinter. I started
Yeah.
off in the 100 and the 200, and so yeah. But the only difference when you're younger is that sometimes you get to run with the boys, and as you get older, obviously you can't compete with boys. But that's the only difference. So yeah, when you're younger, and like I said, I ran track since I'm I want to say I was 6 because I remember running because my birthday's in December, so I
Yes.
always had to run up. I always had to
Right.
like, I was six running with the seven and eights. I was like seven, no, I was eight running with the nine and tens. Like that's how it goes in track. It goes in like 2 years. But
Was it a school team or was it like a club team?
it's a club team. It was the
Okay.
Philadelphia Flames, and you had the
Flames.
Philadelphia Flames, and you had Morris Estate. Morris Estate was the boys team, which Ali Munchkin was the head of the boys team, and that was the teacher that saw my best friend and I, and was like, I need to introduce you to the Philadelphia Flames. And so that was Mr. Jackson, Ron Jackson. And he introduced us to the Flames, and that's what started my track career.
Did you love it from the start, from the first time you ran, or did it
Um,
take a little while to grow on you?
I don't know. I don't know if like when you're that age, you love it. It's just like this is something to do, and you run. It was my best friend and I. It was all
Yeah,
girls.
you're with
We
your
were,
friends.
yeah, we were running. You become, a team. Like you said, it's a little bit different because track is an individualized sport.
Yes.
So the training is different, but at the same time, it's still a team sport. Like because you train with a team.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so yeah, I mean, you loved when you're young. You just it's a practice. Like your mom put you in an extracurricular activity, and that was
Yeah.
our what we thought was an extracurricular activity. But it's not like that. It's not like a club. It wasn't a club team. How because I was in that kind of team, I didn't realize that people had like club teams. And
Right. Right.
so because the Philadelphia Flames, it was a competitive club team. It wasn't just like an extracurricular activity. You had to train.
What was the age range of the Flames? Did they go all the way up through high school?
Up to
Oh,
18.
they did.
Up to
Wow.
18. Yep.
Wow.
Up
I
to
did not
18.
know that.
Absolutely. It was a when we traveled across the country from like a young age, I traveled with track. Like from
Oh my
7 years
God.
old, I traveled across the country running competitively. Whether or not it was Texas, uh,
Texas.
yeah, Texas, California, Louisiana, Florida. That started at a young age with the Philadelphia Flames.
God,
Yeah.
I would have been terrified to get on an airplane at like 6 years old.
Hmm.
I
And then
can't. I believe that.
yeah,
I had
yeah.
no idea. I had no idea that they. I mean, that must have been one of the top clubs in Philadelphia, and they took you guys everywhere to compete.
Yeah, and you did have to qualify to compete.
Yeah,
So
right,
you
right,
weren't just going. That's why I said it was a club. It was club, but it was also competitive. So if you didn't meet the mark to be like in a certain heat, then you weren't going.
right.
So it might be 10 girls. We're going to take 4 girls for the 4x4 team, the 4x1 team, 4x18, 4x2 team, whatever was going on. We're going to take 4 girls and maybe one alternative. But yeah, you had to compete to like be the best.
Yeah,
Because track and field, you have AAU. So
yeah.
you have AAU. You go to your AAU track meets in the summertime, and then you go to it
My
was
God,
always it was at Townsend. It was the East Coast Invitational, and then you went to your USA track and field meet. So those are big.
that's huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, because one of my co-hosts for one of my other podcasts was my track. I did track as well, not running obviously, but he was the track coach at our local high school for 40 plus years. And like we never had club teams or AAU for track. It was just the school team, and it started from seventh grade on. So that's why to hear that you guys started that young, that's new to me, and I had no idea. So by the time you got to junior high, were you on the school team? Like, did you start with the school? No.
I
Okay.
never, I never. So by the time I got to junior high, one of my coaches, who is a very well world-renowned coach now in track and field, he started his own team. His name is Derek Thompson,
Okay.
and he is the track coach of. If you know about track, IG Wilson a couple of years ago was the fastest 800-meter runner.
800. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we went with Derek. He started his own team in middle school, and so I went with Derek. Like I said, Derek Thompson, and we didn't do we didn't train like from a young age. I was coached to be. I was. It was a different realm, like school. You know, you have school
Yeah.
and you have
Yeah.
off, and I never knew what it was like to kind of be like on a club team. Although the Philadelphia Flames was a club, I never knew what it was like to kind of like be on the school team because we were like trained very extensively and very, I should say, intensively at
Yeah.
a young age. So no, I never ran for my middle school. I trained with Derek, which was competitively like track and field. And in
It
middle
was,
school, I believe we were that's when we started doing Colgate, like the Colgate games at in New York City.
that's wow. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I had no idea. So the club team that you were on
Mm-hmm.
was much better than the school team you would have been on.
It was
And and the club team obviously probably had the best talent from the entire area as opposed to the school team which would just have the best talent from the school, right?
exactly. Now
I
there were people. So let's say like high school. I
yeah.
went to Central, which is a magnet school in Philadelphia, and so I say that to say it's definitely it wasn't like a school known for athletics, but you
Right.
did have teammates of mine who went to schools, high school teams like William Penn and Simon Gratz, who are they're known for track and field, who would run for their high school, and so I would train with Derek, and then I would do meets with my high school.
Oh, wow.
Because everybody that trained with Derek,
He was the man
I mean,
or the best.
he is the man.
Yeah.
He's yes, he is the man. And so if you ran with Derek, it was like he was like a coach, mentor, father,
Oh, that's
drill
great. So
sergeant. He was like everything. And so
rolled
the
into
whole point
one.
is if you had a Derek athlete coming to your school, you knew that the athlete wasn't leaving to train with you. But Derek, we were allowed to run for our high school. And so I ran under Fred Rosenfeld. What may he rest in peace. He just passed away maybe 2 months ago from at Central High School. He was a great coach, but I didn't train under him. I always trained and stayed with Derek.
That's amazing. So you ran for your high school team, but your training was consistently with Derek throughout. Wow, from that time all the way up.
That time
That,
all the way up. And even he would
would he come to the meets too?
he has so
He-
many runners. Like say
yeah,
he had 15 runners. Like I was the only one who went to Central. So he had
right,
runners that went to William Penn. He had runners that went to Gratz. He was like our coach and like and like guided us through steps. So let's say for high school, it depends on what him and the other coach will work out. But like
right,
certain meets that wasn't of benefit to his athlete, then we wouldn't do. If
right,
it was
right,
beneficial, like for instance, the pen relays, you know,
right.
if he say Keisha, you gonna run in the pen relays, and I'm running in the pen relays. But it
Yeah,
definitely was what Derek told me to do. So
yeah,
my loyalty was to Derek because I knew that he had the best. I mean, he had been coaching me even with the Philadelphia Flames. He had been coaching me since I was like 9 years old. It's just that like in middle school, he started his own team.
so he always had your best interests in heart,
Always, always.
and
He sent probably everybody that he's raced. I mean, that he's coached. I mean, he's probably responsible for hundreds of people getting like scholarships. And I wasn't one of his best athletes. Like he has athletes that went to Clemson University, Texas. Like I said, IG Wilson. She probably might have been one of the first athletes who did not go to college because she signed a deal with like New Balance or Nike or Adidas or something like that. So he was the pioneer of how football and basketball players like now they can like go to overseas. He was kind of like the pioneer of that with track. Like you got an opportunity to sign a deal with like
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I kind of basically just did what Derek told me to do.
So, how would you say you performed? Did you start in varsity at ninth grade, 10th grade?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you were running with the varsity in ninth grade.
Oh,
And
I was offered scholarships for track in ninth grade to go to college.
in ninth grade, holy crap.
Hmm.
Wow. So what was your primary, like the 100, the 4x1, and like the two? No. Okay.
The 800.
Oh, so you were distance. You did more distance. Okay.
Yeah, well, back then when I first started, people would consider it distance, but now I almost feel like they consider it the 800-meter dash now.
Yeah. No,
It's
it's they run it fast.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a race that I feel like the 800 meter. I feel like the 800 rivals to me the 400-meter hurdles is being like probably one of the most hardest races to run in track because you have to have both speed and stamina to run
Right. Right.
100. It's not like if you could be a distance runner, but if you don't have that speed, like at the end, or to be able to move around, then you're going to get lost in the sauce. And then you could be fast,
Lost in the sauce. I like that.
and then you could be fast, but if you don't have that stamina, then
Yeah.
then
You're not
will
gonna make it.
you're not going to make it. So that's
Right.
like
So
Trisha did. Trisha did the 800. Trisha was able to
right.
run
Yes.
as well. Yep.
She told me that she did the 8 and I think the 4 she mentioned. So it's completely different than like running the mile, which I think was the 1600. So
Absolutely.
the 800 is the real deal.
It's a
Um,
different kind of training. It's a different
yeah.
kind of training because I was fast. I was extremely fast, but not like I said. Derek had athletes that went to Crimson, LSU, Texas.
Yeah.
So I
The
probably could
best of the
have,
best.
yeah, I could have been a sprinter somewhere else, but not on Derek's team. So it's a different kind of training because you have to. The way I was trained like in speed training as well as distance training. So I ran indoor, outdoor, and cross country. So it just depends on like what kind of
Wow.
athlete you are. Whereas if you run like the mile, you're like it's more like a pace thing.
Correct. Right.
Like my
You
coach
try to
would
set the
always say,
pace.
he would say distance is discipline. And
Yes.
so so you don't have to naturally have like a talent, like some people are just born with speed. To be a distance runner, you have to have discipline. You have to you can go out there and discipline yourself and run a certain amount of miles and like be a winner and like I wouldn't say necessarily the mile or the 800, but like the 3200 or something like that, or like a cross country meet because it's really a discipline thing that like Derek would always say distance runners have discipline.
So give me an idea because I have no clue. Like, what is the strategy behind being a successful runner in the 800? Like, what's a strategy that you plan
You
going
touched
into a
my
meet?
strategy.
Yeah, yeah.
My strategy when I ran was the fact that I had speed. And
Right,
so
right. But you obviously can't go 100% the whole time. So your strategy is you keep a pace and then you obviously turn it on at some point, right?
yeah, at the
Okay.
end, the last 150 or the last 100, very few people that ran the 800 had the ability to keep up with me when it
Keep
came
up
to
with
speed.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we running and you could, I mean, like I said, and so the 800, that's another thing about the 800 as well as the 400 hurdles, I assume. I never ran the 400 hurdles, but that's another thing about the 800. It's a very strategic race.
Yeah.
Um, you have to strategize based off of your competitors
Oh, okay.
because,
So
like, let's say like Colgate, for instance. I cannot remember this young lady from New York. She went on to do great things, but my strategy would change because I understood that she had more speed than me at the end. But some people I would get in a race with and I would just pace myself and I knew that the last 150 or the last 100, no matter how hard they tried, they weren't as fast as me.
They couldn't get up to
They
you. I
couldn't
got you.
get. Yep. Another strategy for the 800. The 800 race, unlike the one, the two, and the four, you don't stay in your lane.
Right. You don't. You have to pass people. I forgot about that. That's
Yeah.
true.
It's not
Yeah.
something that you stay in your lane. So it's like small stuff that Derek will coach us on. So like in the beginning of the race, it's very, you have to get out a certain way. And that's a
Right.
strategy. Like people don't understand that's a strategy in track. So that was a gift of mine, like to be able to, because you can get caught up, you can fall,
Yeah.
you can get boxed in.
Yep.
Because people don't realize that. Like people don't realize that you see somebody or that coaches, it might be four girls, and it's like you. Like a lot of times, Derek athletes would be alone, and so they would use their team to like box you in, and there's nothing that you could do once you boxed in track. You just boxed in.
So
So
they would run as a team and
absolutely,
try to box you in so one of their teammates could win. It didn't matter if they won personally, but they just wanted the points as a team. So they felt they did their job as a team to win.
it's just like you. It's
That's
because again, it's an individual sport. It's not like football and track. But
right.
it is straight, like because if you running, you not like thinking like, okay, I'm thinking of these young ladies too from this team, but you're not thinking like, oh, I'm going to box her in the whole race. But it is strategies to that. Like you can get boxed. So if you got three athletes and you on the front and you on the side and I'm right here, and we running
How
that,
do you yeah,
I can't get around you.
there's no way to pass. Yeah.
But that was a gift of mine. I never got boxed in. Like that was one of the best things I did. I knew how to. My coach would use me as an example, like to
Yeah.
other people that didn't know how to start. Because you got to get in and get your pace.
So
You know.
you would start fast
Oh yeah,
and try to get up front, and then you would set your pace.
and then I was set my
And
pace.
and then you would keep that pace throughout, and then the last 150 or so, that's when the jets turned on,
Hmm.
and that's when you would really separate yourself and win.
Again, depending on who was in the race. Yeah,
Correct.
but for the
Right.
most part, yeah, for the most part, I definitely would get out. And no matter what, you don't want to get boxed in.
Right.
Not
Right.
want to
That's
get
the
boxed
worst thing that can happen to
in. Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and then that was definitely a strategy of mine running the 800. I ran a 400 as well. I ran a mile sometimes,
So
but
he could throw you in anything, really, because you were so gifted in what you could do.
uh-huh. And that's a
I got
strategy
you.
of a coach too. Like the
Yes.
coach, when it comes to points and stuff like that. Like when I did run for Central, you do see who's in there. You do see. I'm so glad that people understand this because people don't understand it is a strategy with track. You do see. What the other teams has, you see where you can get points at. So if you already know that you got the 800 on lock or the 400 on lock and you don't have anybody, you're at a track meet and they don't have anybody in a mile run, you might get put in a. Mr. Rosenfeld might say, I need Keisha to run a mile because we need points here, and these other teams that we're competing against don't have anybody in a mile. So you just
Right.
do what you got to do for your team to win. So that's what I can say about Derek. Derek's training was more individual, and when you run for a high school, you do consider
I wish that I had my guy with me, but I definitely want to do another podcast with you when I have my co-host who would coach track for 40 years and have him talk some shop with you about the strategy and stuff,
I
because
would
that
love
was that was his major thing. Like he would know the day of the meet whether we were going to win or not because he could tally up the points because the numbers don't lie. He would put the numbers together and see where he needed who to run where and how many points we were going to get, where we were going to need points. And like he was always spot on with his prediction before the meet, knowing whether we were going to win or not. And then he also knew the areas where we were deficient and where we were going to have to get lucky or put someone else in to get those points that we were missing to get the lead. So that's funny how it worked out that way.
I don't know anything about that. I'm just whatever my coach told me to do.
Yeah,
I was just like,
exactly. Yeah.
okay, yeah. And then God blessed me because after Derek, I had the opportunity, obviously, to come to UConn, and then I was coached. You know,
All right.
the coach that stuck out to me the most was Sean. I think
Yes.
Sean Wendell.
He was great, and he was one of the was he one of the strength coaches too?
He was the strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah, I love Sean. I loved
I
him.
love Sean. Yeah, it's funny. I was on live last year, and he got on the live, and I had found him, and like, so he was like on the live, and I was like, "That's my coach," and I was like, you know what? It's crazy because everybody, when Sean was at UConn, he was so
Yeah.
good, and I was like, Coach. I'm like, Coach, you're gonna coach in the NFL, the NBA, like one day. Like you're like the best coach ever. And obviously he went to the NBA,
Yes.
NBA strength and conditioning coach. And so when I started off as Derek, I was like Derek's first batch, like of because Derek is from Jamaica. And so he's naturally like a soccer coach. He plays soccer. And
I got you.
yeah, and so he started off as like a father at at track practice, and then he started coaching. And so he started off like just coaching us, and then obviously he's coaching the world
Right.
right now. And so it's the same thing with Coach. I call him Coach Sean. Well, I just called him Coach, and and Sean is coaching NBA athletes. We spoke, and I think he's coaching like a private person right now for the Lakers or one of those teams out there in California. So I'm just like, God blesses me with like when they're like starting off and then they become these like mega people.
They do. They work their way up and they hone their craft, and that's so important. Um, you had like a good mentor and someone to guide you from an early age on, and protected you and advised you and helped you. And what's curious to me, like you said, you were being offered as a freshman. How like would college coaches be at these meets and see you run at that
That's
age?
that's a good question. And so that again, that's what set Derek apart. Derek track is not a team sport. It is an individualized sport. And Derek was the kind of coach that cared about his athletes. And when I say that, I'm saying he wasn't coaching from a point of obviously if you're a hired coach of let's say like a high school, you want the goal is for your high school to win the track and field championship. So Derek did everything based off the individual. And so what Derek would do was look for track meets for us. And so like a perfect example, we would go to the Seton Hall Invitational all the time as high school athletes because okay, so that's the difference between track. With track, you can run up, but you can't run down.
Right. Oh my God.
So
Wow.
yeah, so if you choose to be 13, 14, you can run 15, 16 all you want. You
Yeah.
just can't be 15, 16 running 13, 14.
Right. Right.
And so in high
Wow.
school, we were going to college meets. Like he would have us at, I believe it's called the Seton Hall Invitational. And I never forget, it
That's
was,
unbelievable. Wow.
mhm, yeah. And so we were competing against college athletes.
And how would you guys do? How would you fare? I mean, you're running against whenever you're pushed by competition, it makes you better. It usually
Well, we
makes you
won. We won. And
yeah.
that's why we were
You
offered
won.
scholarships.
So
Yeah.
you're beating these college teams, and they're like, "Oh, okay, we got to offer these people." Wow.
So I
So
remember
that
a college coach coming up to my coach. I believe it was like Morgan or Coppin State, something like that. And and that's when we got recruited. It may have been 10th grade. I know I wasn't a junior yet because that's when I really started to get offers.
that's amazing.
Um, but they were more impressed by I remember because our coach didn't believe in coaching us once we got to the meet. Like when we got to the
He
track,
let you do your thing, right?
Yeah, when we
because
got
you had already done the work. I totally get that.
yeah,
You
our
already
coach
put in the work.
he trained us as such. Like our coach, when we got to the meet, he drove us there and like that was it. Like we saw him when it was time to go.
He left you alone. He let you do
Like
your
if
thing.
we had 3 races, this is what you running today. We knew to go look at what time it was. We knew what heat we were in. Like we were trained.
Yeah.
And so what I
You were like Navy SEALs of track.
for real. And that's what impressed the college coach. So the college coach came up to my coach and said, "How do you get them to do that?" And my coach was like, "What?" And he was like, "I watched it and you didn't have to tell them to warm up. You didn't have to tell them to warm down. You didn't have to tell them anything." So
Yeah.
I guess other coaches they'll go and tell their athletes, "Okay, it's time for you to warm up. It's time for you
Yeah.
to warm down." Like no, we were. I mean, Derek would come and he'd sit in the stand and talk to coaches.
Well,
Like we didn't have to bother our coach, or our coach never had to come to us. Sometimes if we might have had like a cramp or something, he may stretch us out, or he may come and give us a strategy again, depending on who was in the race. But for the most part, and I got offered a scholarship based off of that.
and I'm sure that your practices were probably a lot harder than the meets as well.
Our practices were Derek's practices were harder than anybody's practice. I mean,
Yeah, that's what I figured.
I had a friend that, like I said, she ran for Clemson University, Kamika, and like I said, people from Auburn. I mean, literally, like any college you name, like Derek is Beth Kearney, all these people that you would know, like all these track and field athletes, they know Derek and they honor Derek. And so these people would come home from training with their college and be like, "Listen, I got to get prepared to go for a Derek practice."
Wow.
Yeah, like man, I'm like, "You practicing with Derek?" They like, "Oh no, I got to get prepared. Like I got to get mentally
I'm
prepared
not ready. Yeah.
for a Derek practice." He didn't play. He didn't play. He was like, you had to have a different kind of mentality to deal with Derek. And
Yeah, he's the Bill Belichick of track.
he was the Bobby Knight of track.
Bobby Knight of track. Okay.
He was the Bobby Knight of track. Like he carried it like that. Like he didn't play with you. And some people from the outside looking in, you would think that his tactics were inappropriate, but we were his girls. So
Yeah, he pushed you to get the best out of you.
he pushed us in very
Yeah.
unorthodox ways.
Yes. Yes.
And
Well, that's what the best do.
it's funny because the work I do here, I was on a Zoom call and I had to apologize and I had to tell them, I said, "Listen, I apologize. Sometimes if I come across a little brass, and I had to tell them that I was coached by like the Bobby Knight of track. So that's the only way I know how to coach people. So like if anything, like if I'm spending energy with you, then it's like I love you. But sometimes it might come off a little bit hard. But that's just how I was.
That's how you got to. That's how you got to coach. You got to develop that mental toughness. You got to develop that physical toughness, and that's what gets you to succeed.
Mhm.
Um, so when did UConn come into the picture? Would you say?
UConn came into the picture. I never forget, and I was Angela Goodman. Angela Goodman was my coach. Angela Goodman, shout out to Angela Goodman and Judy Bokenchus. They were both from Indiana, and I cannot remember this gentleman's name, but he was telling them about me. I got recruited by so many schools.
And did Derek influence that? Did they have contact with Derek before they had contact with you? Like
Everybody had to have contact with my coach before they contacted
that's
me.
what I figured. Okay,
Yeah, I mean they didn't have to. That's the way that I carried it. Like that's my coach.
exactly.
So what I do know is that I don't know you. He has my
Right.
best interest in mind,
Right.
and
If
so I trust him. I'm,
if he gives you, yeah,
a
the
little
stamp of approval.
yeah. It's funny. I was at church yesterday, and I was talking to like my friend of mine, and I was talking about like my bishop, right? And we were talking about like husbands and stuff. And I was like, well, I don't really have to worry about anything because I got a spiritual father right here. So if I'm, you know what I mean, confused about something, here goes my father. He's going to tell me what to do, and I trust him, right? And so it's the same
You're
thing.
right.
Yeah, right. So I don't have to worry about that. Like I'm good. I got a daddy, right? And so it was like that's how Derek was. He was like my. I have a dad. I had a dad. He passed away, but he was my daddy in that world. And so anything that he instructed me to do, I trusted him because I know
Yeah.
that he loved me. You
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
that time and energy,
That makes a difference.
it makes a difference. And so, regardless of course, again, I was my own individual. My mother was my mother. My father was my father. But they were persevering and coaching me for 10 years of my life since I was a child. So, you know, so I believe that Derek was Howell University, and he called Coach Goodman. And I wonder how she's doing. But he called Coach Goodman and he said, and he told her about me. And I never forget when she came to see me, I had a mental block and I flopped.
Really?
I flopped at the track meet. Derek was like,
Oh.
here to come see you. And I flopped.
Well, that happens. That happens. We all get nervous, and we all have those moments. Bethany would tell me about that. Bethany told me at the Olympic trials, she would always have like one of her worst performances because she would just get in her own head and have so much pressure on her. And it's like I trained for 4 years and it comes down to these three throws. And she said that it was the one thing that she couldn't get over. It was a mental hurdle. So I completely understand.
Shout out to Bethany. Bethany was a machine. I mean, that's all.
I know.
Bethany was a machine. You talk about mental toughness. Bethany was like she was just a machine. Shout out to Bethany.
Well, I do a podcast with her now. We started a
Oh, okay.
podcast, so I'll talk to her. We should definitely have you on her podcast too.
I mean,
Um,
Bethany
she's
was
a.
a machine.
I told her I was terrified of her in college. I swear to God, if I saw her, I walked the other way. Like I saw her lifting weights and how much she was lifting. I was like Jesus. I was scared to death of her.
Okay.
I
And
told her that. Yeah.
Lissa,
Li-
remember Lissa?
Yeah, Lissa, I kind of harassed because I'm a huge WWE fan.
Okay.
So once I found out who her brother was,
Uh-huh.
I kind of was like, can I please go see wrestling with you? And I hounded her about it, and I would talk to her about it. And she took us to a couple shows. And one of the funniest moments was they had a show in Hartford. After the event, we went and hung out with her brother in their hotel room. And her brother had his wrestling gear hanging up. And I was just in full fan mode. And stupidly, I say, "Hey, can I try on your outfit?" And Matt looks at Lissa, and he's like, "Who the hell is this kid?"
Exactly what he would have said.
He's like, "How old are you?" I'm like, "Well, I'm 19." He's like, "Grow up." He's like, "It's entertainment. It's fake, right? We're not really killing each other out there. I mean, it hurts, but Jesus, you want to put on my gear, my sweaty gear that I just wore?" Sorry, my bad. Lissa's
Listen,
like,
Bethany was a machine. I think
"Yep,
that and remind me to go back to the flop and how I got a scholarship. But I just want to talk like briefly about that, like at UConn. Like I was what track did for me is um the relationships.
that's what all sports are. It's about the camaraderie and your teammates."
Yeah, like
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember Ricky from the boys team, Jigsy from like the soccer team. Like it's so many people at UConn that's what I got, and I cannot remember this lady's name, and she is going to kill me because she was there in some moments, and she and I know the moments that we were talking about. She was the coach after Coach Boganchus and Judy left. And I can't remember.
Okay.
Do you remember her? Like she was
No.
really cute. Forgive me if you hear this because, like I said, she was there for me and some. She was there
Yeah.
for me and some like personal moment,
Right.
But like you talking about Matt and like I said, I just literally a couple of hours ago was like, happy birthday, Matt, because that was my family. That was my
Yeah.
family from
Yeah.
Philadelphia. My mom nor my dad had the means for me to be able to go home. And so
Right.
I went,
Oh.
yeah,
So
I wasn't
you
able to
went to Boston or
absolutely.
Peabody, where
I
they
was
were
in
from.
Peabody with the Blooms.
We went there too a couple times. She
I
took
was
us out in
listen,
Boston. I loved it there.
I was in Peabody with the Blooms eating at what's it
Great
called?
family.
Lagoons I can't remember where we get the Chinese food and Mr. Mike, who hate that I used to call him Mr. Mike and Misty Lane, he'd be like, "Stop calling me that." I'm like, "That's disrespectful in our culture to be calling you Mike and Elaine. I'm not about to do it. I'm calling you Mr.
Absolutely.
Mike." But that was like God literally, thank you, God. God literally placed people in my life, and the Bloom family was
They were
literally
great.
surrogate family for me.
I didn't know that.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
This is technically, and another friend of mine from UConn is technically my daughter's godmom.
Oh,
But that's when you're like 23 and you're like, oh, you're gonna be my girl, my daughter godmom, and like the godmom that like never sees your child, like that kind of
well, I
godmom.
mean, she's in Boston. I mean, I get it.
No, I'm just
No,
kidding. But no,
I
listen, Marissa are still those are those type of friends that you don't have to talk to in 20 years, but those are your best friends.
yeah, that you
So
no,
yeah,
nothing
Marissa are my
changes.
best friends. Yeah, from UConn. But the Blooms, like Lissa, we would go to track meets, and it was me, Lissa, and Marissa. That was us.
Yeah.
And Louise.
Yeah.
You remember
Yeah.
Louise?
Yes.
Yeah. So true story
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
UConn. When I first go there, they put me in McMahon Hall
Of course.
because
That's
that's
for
where all the track
freshmen.
dudes is at. And Lissa and Louise are my roommates. And Louise says, I got a cat named Keisha. And I'm like, what? And Lissa says, I got a dog named Keisha. I'm like, what? Like true story.
Oh my God.
Like that's how like tedious God is. But
Connected you were. Yeah.
yeah, I got moved though. I moved like across the street from Watson.
Well, Lissa ended up in, I thought Lissa ended up in Hilltop with me eventually because I remember seeing
No,
her
it
as a
wasn't
sophomore.
again. What's the one that was by Huskies?
Oh, that was Hale and Ellsworth at Hilltop or
I was at
alumni.
Hilltop. I was at Hilltop at first.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where she was.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I was at Hilltop like for like a day or
Yeah.
two.
So yeah, you were right by me. I was on the 7th floor. I think they were on the 5th floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I got moved to like outside where nobody was at across the street from Watson.
Oh, you got moved all the way.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, the Blooms were like, so I say that to say that like Lisa and I, like confessions right now, Mr. Mike might hear this for the first time. We were like, oh, we good because you know how it is. The basketball players had the good per diem. We had like the little $8 meal per diem.
We got the $20. Yeah.
We were like, it's okay, Mr. Mike is there. Like Mr. Mike gonna take care of us. Listen, but like, it's okay, my dad is there. Like we knew we were good, and so yes, that was my like home away from home. Obviously, Matt had started playing for the WWF, and like we were just, it was like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, my brother's Prince Albert, yeah,
Yeah, Prince Albert, the A Train. Yep.
yeah. Then I remember going to the wedding, and I was like, "They're gonna Undertaker."
Yes. Oh, I'll tell you a story about him too. I was similar with, if you remember, Uwe
Yeah,
Sunday and Terry McLaury,
yeah.
Rashad Drayton. So the guys that kind of couldn't go home for Easter or whatever, Thanksgiving, I would have them at my house. So, like, I'd have 5 or 6 of the guys that would always come for Easter. Easter was the big one. And I remember there'd just be bodies laying all over my parents' house. And we would have a huge Easter dinner, and my roommate, we moved to Hilltop Apartments, and I lived with Big O, Lawrence Oliver. I don't know if you remember him.
Mm-hmm.
And so Lawrence Oliver for Easter was got up. We were all hungover. Got up and was helping my mother cook Easter dinner for everyone. And Rashad was a Muslim, so he couldn't eat ham. So they got turkey, and I think mom made lasagna for him. And then Big O, Lawrence, was teaching my mother how to make like real Southern macaroni and cheese, like how to bake it and everything. And my mom's like trying to write it down and make it with him. And I'm sitting in there and I'm watching this. I'm like, they're really doing this. He's cooking with my mother for Easter. But that I used to do the same thing. Like after games, the guys whose parents couldn't travel to the home games, we would take them out to dinner after the games. Because I mean, that's just what we did. That was the camaraderie we had. And I always felt, UConn was a jock school. I mean, all the athletes
Absolutely
really supported each other, and it wasn't like clicky. I felt we all kind of hung out together.
We did. It's funny
we
you
all
say
partied
that.
together.
I can't remember who was the girl that played basketball. She was like thick, but she could shoot. She was
Maria, Maria Conlon.
She was like Oklahoma or something, because I remember I'm like, what is this white girl doing making these potatoes like this? Like she can cook, and she was like, I'm from Oklahoma. She can. That's funny going to UConn.
Stacy Hansmeyer. Stacy Hansmeyer.
She brought some food, and I was like,
Bam Bam. Her name was Bam Bam. That was her nickname. Yes.
So when you said that,
Bam.
I was like, she was like, I know how to cook, and I'm like, yes, girl. You cook like because I was like, you cook like my grandma, and she was like,
yeah,
but she
had that accent, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that funny? Like the white girl that could shoot at UConn, like
yes,
everybody, like
yeah. Well, that's what I always used to do because on Valentine's Day, I would always have the entire at our apartment. Because my roommate was Mike Woodward, who was dating Ashley Valley, who was on the girls' basketball team, and they ended up getting married.
Yeah.
And Morgan Valley is now an assistant coach at UConn.
Okay.
So I would always cook a big dinner on Valentine's Day for the girls' basketball team. They would come to our apartment. All I knew how to cook was pasta. I would make a great pasta sauce. I love my pasta sauce. So we'd have pasta. I'd make meatballs, garlic bread, and salad, and we'd have all the girls over. And I was friendly. Like I knew Maria Conlon very well. I was friends with her. I was friends with Dee. I was friends with Sue. I was sort of friends with Swin Cash. I almost broke her nose, but other than that, because they used to have the guys practice against the girls during, they'd have the guys practice with the girls to make them better. And I wasn't a good basketball player, and I don't even know how I got in, but I got in. And within 5 minutes, I fouled the crap out of Swin Cash. And Swin Cash, one of the star players.
That team that you're talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know how everybody, but that particular group, like Swin, Tamika, all of them, D.
Asia Jones, yep.
Yeah, they were all like, I feel like they was like the coolest group ever.
Oh, they were so much fun.
It's like you said,
so much fun.
Like, it's a jock school. We all supported each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was never like a rivalry type thing. Like,
no.
We all supported each other, and
we always partied with them. We always partied together.
We always partied, So people people think and like I don't really talk a lot about it, Like if I see D playing, like D still feisty, or
Oh yeah, I love D. I love D.
I'm like, oh, that's my homegirl, and like so people like be thinking I'm lying or something. I'm like, like.
I'm like, I got her number in my phone. Like I can show that. Like I can text her. It's like, but yeah, I loved that D like was giving Caitlin Clark a hard time early on because like I always felt bad because, and I do a podcast with Maria Conlon as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
How many?
and
Hold on now, Steve. How many podcasts you doing?
I did do about 10.
That's what's up. I need to start a podcast.
That's my career. Well,
Put me
that's
in
my
the
career
Steve.
now. Yeah, I do. I do.
Podcast.
I do. I'd probably do 3 to 4 Husky talks a week.
Okay.
I do a podcast with Maria Conlon that does. We cover women's basketball, and now she's a head coach at Western Connecticut State.
Yay.
I do a podcast called Husky Huddle, where we cover the UConn football team. We recap the game that they played and preview the opponent they're playing the following week. We just started Husky Hoops, where we're going to cover the men's team. I have a host, and I also host with Joe D'Ambrosia, who is the voice of the UConn Huskies. He used to cover all the basketball games, all the football games. So we got him involved. And I work with Dave Schumann is my partner, and he's a former UConn football player, but he got into running football camps. He ran them all over the country, and now he's a content creator. So his YouTube channel, which
he was there when we were there, right?
Yeah, his last year was when you and I were freshmen, I believe. Yeah,
he kind of looks like Asian, Spanish, or something like.
you're right. He's part. He is. He's part. He's part Asian. I can't remember if it's Taiwanese or Filipino, but yes, he is part that, and he's also like part Jewish. He's a mix of everything. But he has a YouTube channel that has 1 million subscribers. So I had him on Husky Talk as a guest. And once I saw that, he had been doing this for a while, he actually gets paid by YouTube. I asked him just like, hey, if you could help me out and put my shows on your YouTube channel, that would definitely help my listenership and viewership. And he said, yeah, no problem.